Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining here at Unapologetically Progressive. Once again, I am back with another video, and we're going to continue talking about SNAP benefits. But first off, check out my short form content over on TikTok, Unapologetic Progressive. I couldn't get Unapologetically Progressive to fit, so it's Unapologetic Progressive. So check me out over there for my shorter form content. Now, SNAP benefits. 42 million Americans rely on it. We've talked about it on this channel relentlessly over the last few months, and Trump still hasn't paid them. Now they say they were going to, back on Tuesday, it came out that they were going to provide 65% of benefits to all the beneficiaries of the SNAP benefit program. That's what they figured out they could do with the contingency funds. Now that wasn't going to be great for people, especially going into the holidays, but you know what? It was going to be better than nothing. But because of how slow they went, on Wednesday, a federal judge ordered them to fully fund it. Now the Trump administration is trying to legally block that, even though at the same time the people at the USDA are saying they're going to comply. But Donald Trump has already challenged it, trying to challenge it in court, and trying to, has already put it in the courts, in the District 1 appeals court. Now, which is it, Donald Trump? Are you going to feed the American people, or are you letting the American people starve? Make up your mind, sir. And many of you out there are going to be like, oh, well, this is the Democrats' fault because they shut down the government. I don't even want to hear it. That's one of a terrible argument because it's just not true. The funds for November were there. The USDA has the ability to tap two separate funds, as pointed out by the judges that have ruled in these cases. One, there was a contingency fund, which is roughly $6 billion. That would have covered two-thirds right there. That would have covered roughly two-thirds of the entire budget for SNAP benefits for the month of November. They could have given out partial payments. Like I said, not great, but better than nothing. Right? That's what they could have done. They had the ability to do that. But they also had the ability to tap a $28 billion fund to fully fund the program. It would have been able to fully fund the program for the month of November and the month of December, because it roughly costs about $8 million or $8 billion to run the SNAP benefit program every month. Now, we can talk about why people are on SNAP benefits, but let's talk about the people that are on SNAP benefits. Children, minors, right? People under the age of 18. The majority of those children, though, are under the age of 5. That makes up roughly 40% of the entirety of the SNAP benefit program. It's making sure children eat. The rest of the majority are elderly, disabled people, right? People that are disabled they can't work, or they're getting up in age and they can't work. That is the gist of it. Those are the people that you're wanting to starve right now. Yeah, there's somewhere around 30% of people that are able-bodied on the SNAP benefit program. Right? Because it's roughly 70% are made up of children, elderly, and disabled. So you got about 30% that are able-bodied and are on the program. Now, why are they on the program? Do we want to talk about why, or do you even care? Because most of you conservatives out there don't care. You're always out there like, well, I work. Why don't they work? Why don't they get off their ass? The thing is, they do. Roughly 20% of that remaining 30% that are able-bodied on the SNAP benefit program work. The remaining roughly 8 to 10% that don't work are either taking care of an elderly loved one, or they have children under the age of 5 that they don't want sending out, to daycares and stuff, or they can't afford daycares. Right? And some states allow you to do that. If you're caring for an elderly loved one, caring for a child that's under the age of 5 a lot of times, or under school age, you can stay home and with them. But that's roughly, like I said, roughly 10% of the entire group of people. Now, if we want to talk about the future, if we want to talk about bringing down costs in the SNAP benefit program, we can have those discussions, right? Like, like on the administrative side of things. I don't think they should have to spend as much on administrative costs as they do. There's got to be a way to streamline things and make it, more affordable. There's got to be a way for that, right? But at the same time, the better solution to get people out of poverty and off of food stamps is to demand that corporations pay the American people what they're worth. Pay them a living wage. That way they're able to compete in life, right? Most people that are on food stamps don't want to be on food stamps. The elderly people, the disabled people, the ones that I've been around, don't want to be on food stamps, but they don't have a choice. The children don't get a choice on who their parents are and how well, endowed their bank accounts are. Children don't get that option. We have to make sure the children eat, right? We want to make sure that grandma can eat. We want to make sure that anybody that's, disabled to the point that they can't work is able to eat. The fact is, there could be 100 people telling me they're hungry, and 10 of them could be lying to me, and I would still want to feed them, right? I would still want to feed them. But here's the thing: we want to cut down on that, raise, raise the minimum wage. You raise the minimum wage, fewer people are, one, going to qualify for food stamps, but two, won't need it. In fact, all we are doing with our SNAP benefit program right now is subsidizing the likes of Walmart and other major companies like that, so they can pay starvation wages to people that are in the workforce. And you can say all you want about, oh well, McDonald's wasn't supposed to be a full-time job. It wasn't supposed to be a forever job. Well, for some people, it's the only job they can get. And if more places would provide more money, people wouldn't have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs to make ends meet or have to need help on government assistance. My wife works. We don't qualify for SNAP benefits. We make about $15 too much here in Oklahoma. Right? We make about 15 bucks too much to qualify for SNAP benefits. But you don't see me out here crying and whining that other people get SNAP benefits because I want people to have that food. And even if you're one of those people out here, crapping on people because they need government assistance, I hope to dear God that if you ever hit a snag in life, some kind of catastrophic event happens, you lose a job, whatever, I hope that those benefits are there to help you. Because I'm not like you. We're not the same. You see, I don't have to have something bad happening to me for me to care about other people. Right? I just care about people. I've been that way since I was a child. I have never changed on that particular part of me. When I was a teenager, I couldn't understand why people on the news were always talking about trying to cut food stamps. I was like, don't these people need to eat? Don't all Americans deserve to eat? I thought that was one of the things that made America better than the rest of the world is everybody got to eat. Now, I learned as I got older, when I got into my 20s, got into college, that not everybody was eating, even with the SNAP benefit program. That not everyone was able to access the money they needed to be able to feed themselves. I don't think it's all that radical to believe that every American deserves to eat. And you can't just say, oh, well, the church will take care of it, because they won't. There's a woman over on social media right now, over on TikTok, I believe it is, going around and calling every church that she can find, trying to see if she can just get some formula for her child. And most of the churches are saying no. Either they can't help or they won't help. The woman has literally had one religious institution call her back and offer to help, and that was a mosque. And that's the only religious institution that has been willing to help. So the fact is, we can't rely on just churches. We're all in this thing together. America's one giant boat, and we're sinking. And I guarantee you, those people at the bottom are going to drag the rest of the world with them. You know what? Because if people can't afford to buy groceries, right, they're not going to be able to buy anything else. Therefore, restaurants are going to close up. Businesses are going to close up. Grocery store chains are going to close more stores, creating more food scarcity. And it's one giant domino after another. It's just tick, tick, tick until the whole ship sinks. So I believe that we need our taxes to go to good things. And I believe the taxes that my wife pays in for however long the federal government keeps it, because she hardly ever gets anything back from, income tax anymore. Um, the taxes they do take out, I want it to go to feed people. I want it to go to house people. I want it to go to education. Like if I was to start making money here on YouTube, I would gladly have my taxes come out to go help feed people, to house people, to clothe people. Because that's what I believe in. That is one of my core beliefs in life, is that everybody should be taken care of. And even though I'm not a religious person, I've never been a religious person. There have been some teachings from that black book that I held dear. And Jesus is talking to the people, right? And talking to the people and saying that when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was sick, you healed me. And then the people are like, but we never did that for you. We never saw you. And he says something to the extent of, what you have done for the least of us, you have done for me. And that has stuck with me, right? Because believe it or not, I may not be a religious person, but I have a belief that kindness is important, right? I don't have to be religious. I don't even have to be a believer to understand that kindness is important. And that I was raised Christian. I was raised in different churches. The Methodist Church, been to Baptist churches, all throughout my youth. Catholic churches, Christian churches, you name it. But the one thing I always clung to, even as I was getting to where I didn't believe it anymore, as I got towards high school, as I was trying my best to still believe in religion, I read and I read and I read the red words over and over again in the back of that Bible. And I didn't hear one thing about hating people. I didn't hear one thing about letting people starve because they didn't work. I didn't hear letting people die of illnesses because they couldn't heal themselves, because they couldn't afford it. I never read anything about that, but I did read about love and compassion and kindness and caring for your fellow person. I learned about feeding people just because they're hungry with no qualifiers to it. You just feed them. You give me Elon Musk's 500 almost 500 billion dollar bank account. You give me that and see how quick that money no longer exists. Yeah, I would buy myself a place to live. I'd buy myself a vehicle. I'd buy myself a TV. Sure. But the majority of that stuff, the majority of that $500 billion would go to charity. No one needs 500 billion. No one needs 100 billion. Nobody really needs $1 billion, right? The money would go to charity, to people. I would provide that money that he promised to the UN to solve hunger for however long the funds could last. I would personally send money to the Treasury of the U.S. government to pay for SNAP benefits. I would provide money to every single food bank I could across the country. But you see, that's because I've grown up poor. I've spent years in poverty. There were times when my mother couldn't pay the bills. There were times when my mother ate dinner or watched me eat dinner and she didn't eat anything. Things you don't think about until you get older, right? When you're a kid and your mom hands you a bowl of soup or a bowl of spaghetti and says eat, and then she's not eating, you assume, oh, mom must have ate earlier or she'll eat later. But a lot of times mom wasn't doing that. A lot of times mom just wasn't eating. We had moments where we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water. During the winter, we ran out of propane in one of our houses that we lived in. And that all got turned around. But you know what we never got? We never got assistance from the government. Because every time she applied for assistance, food stamps, things like that, she was turned down. Every single time. And then later on, she turned that around. She ended up starting her own business and doing really well. But the fact is, for a long time, we lived without. For a long time, we relied on the food we got often came from my grandmother, who would go off to Sam's and would drive down with boxes of ramen noodle, boxes of canned soups, right? And bread products and stuff to put in the freezer. So I understand what these families are going through. I understand needing food. And then in my adult life, it's not much different. We have our ups and downs. Sometimes we're doing great, and other times we're broke and can't afford to buy food hardly. Sometimes it's literally a salad or hot dogs, right? And sometimes it's hoping and being fearful about if we're going to be able to afford the next order of groceries or the next trip to the grocery store or whatever. So the fact is, most people that are on SNAP benefits, they're not on SNAP benefits to be lazy. They're not on SNAP benefits to steal your money. They're on SNAP benefits because they've set aside their pride to feed their families and feed themselves. Before my wife and I went on SNAP benefits in like I think it's 2011, 2012, something like probably 2012, 2013. Um, we suffered for years, right? Before we went on the SNAP benefit program, we were literally, I was literally taking $50 and feeding two people for a month as prices were already rising. And this was long before COVID, right? But prices were steadily going up on things. And we had $50 for 4 weeks of food. And very often it was ramen noodle, soup in a cup, ramen noodle, soup in a cup, occasional hot dog. And the only reason I applied for food stamps was because I went to the doctor after about 3 years of eating nothing but ramen and hot dogs and the cheapest food you can freaking find, right? And my health was reeling. My blood work came back, and my doctor looked at me and said, "You're about to have a stroke." So I applied for food stamps the next day because we could not do that anymore. We had to eat healthier. We had to get some food, and we just weren't getting it. And so we finally got that. We got help from a local food pantry when that got cut. And when she got that job fully going on, that she was working when she was working 40 hours a week, when I was able to get home health care, we were doing fine. She was working 8 hours a day. We were doing fine. But the fact is, not everybody has that option. Not everybody can find a job that pays well and gives good benefits. She got lucky because she happened to get a job in a bakery at a grocery store. Same work she does today, just does it at a different store. But she's not able to work away from home because we don't have access to home health care to take care of my needs when she's not here. So before you shit on people because they're on SNAP benefits, think about where they came from. Think about what they've gone through. Think about the pride they had to set aside to get help. Thanks for watching.